madhyamam asmadacharya paryantam vande guru paramparam. Om Bhadram karnebhihi shrunuyama devaah Bhadram pashyema akshabhiryajatraah Sthirairangaistushtvagum sastanubhihi Vashema devahitam yadayuh Swastina indro vriddhashravah Swastina pusha vishwavedah Swastinastarksho arishtanemihi Swasti no brihaspatir dadhatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishabhai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Nantaf Pragyam Na Bahish Pragyam Na Ubhayataf Pragyam Na Pragyanaganam Na Pragyam Na Apragyam Adrishtam Avyavaharyam Agrahyam Alakshanam Achintyam Avyapadeshyam Ekatma Pratyayasaram Prapancha Upashamam Shantam Shivam Advaitam Chaturtham Manyante Sa Atma Sa Vigyeyaha. One thing to keep in mind as we study and listen to the Shastra, the scriptural truth about ourselves is, and really out of the entire Vedic knowledge Shastra, which is vast and covers so many different angles, the Advaita Vedanta has a very, very specific and very precise message for us. And it concerns itself with the message of what you are. Not what you need to be. What you aspire to be. What you should be. What you should do to be. None of that is what Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta says. So this has to be, for a committed, serious student of Vedanta, this should become very clear, and repeatedly so, because we keep forgetting. It says that just know as you are. Know as I am. How am I going to? What does it mean? Because I have a life. I know what I'm doing. I mean, to an extent, I know. And so all of this. So, what do you mean by that? So here, the entire Mandukya Upanishad, the entire Karika, the entire seventh mantra, the most important mantra, is saying you are free from all problems of life. And this I need to understand, because that's against my experience. That I'm full of problems is my life. And how can you say that I am free of problems? Exactly. This is what we need to know. So, one asks, how is that? What's my problem? What do I need to do to make sure that I see your message, which I have Shraddha in. I have no reason to disbelieve it because of its authenticity, because of its repeatedly proofed message. I have no reason to do that, but I don't quite get it. So here, this is to explain, the seventh mantra is to basically explain where am I making a mistake. So if you boil down to it, the mistake I'm making is what is called abhimana. Abhimana means identification. So I think if we have to sort of focus on where I need to understand and how I need to understand all of that, it is to understand the abhimana, the identification. The reason I am getting into problems is because not knowing my true nature, I glom on to some experiences which fascinate me, which are gripping me. This is the issue, abhimana. How is that? What is the abhimana? What do you mean identification? So, we have just to set the stage for it, what identification means is that for some reason, whatever the reason is, you forget your true nature and you behave in a way which was influenced by an identification. And the good example these days is to be absorbed in in some effort, some event, like seeing a movie, or even reading a book. But I think seeing a movie is, most people can appreciate that. What that means is that as you sit down in your seat, this is why I think going to a movie theater is more of an experience. Because, if you're just watching your laptop, then there's a lot of other things going on. Laptop is just one small thing. And yes, you can get absorbed in the story from a laptop or a phone, but it isn't quite the same thing. But if you go to a movie theater, lights are turned down, sound increases, and my gosh, the sound these days with all the surround sound, it really surrounds you. So the purpose of doing that is that you settle into your seat and you now get absorbed in a new scene which now unfolds in front of you. So now this is what a good movie does, is that you start to get absorbed in the storyline of the theater, and pretty soon you start to get so absorbed that you forget about your own life before you enter the theater, right? And pretty soon you get absorbed and you start to identify with some characters. This is where your previous memory and experiences all come about. You have some ideas of what is good, what is bad, and why isn't this person being treated well. You start to identify with the person, and if that person gets into some problems, now you get into a problem. All of that. You know that. Let's now go into more detail. This is what is called identification. So the essence of the identification is abhimana. Abhimani. Abhimani is the one that has the abhimana. Means the one who identifies with an identification. The essence of that is you are behaving according to what you see, not according to what you are. Please let those words sink into you. Why? Because that is the essence of the seventh mantra of the Mandukya Upanishad. Nantaf pragyam na bahish pragyam na vayataf pragyam na pragyanaghanam na pragyam na pragyam. Up to this point. Then adrishtam avyavaharyam will come later. That's the second part. The first part is, my dear, you asked the question, why am I getting into problems? Why am I a samsari? I am a samsari itself is an understanding, a realization. But then to say, really? Is there a way to get out of it? And the Shastra says, yes. How? Okay. You willing to listen? Are you starting? Okay. It is because of abhimana. And how? What abhimana? You are identified. So there's a difference here. This is interesting. Going to a movie, you already had an identity. Whoever you are, you're a woman, you're a man, you're an older person, you are someone. You have a life, you have family, work, house, etc. There's some identity. Okay? You go to a movie and you start identifying with the characters and the very storyline of the movie, you forget your identity. And you get so absorbed. That's exactly what a movie does. A good movie is supposed to completely involve and absorb you. But there, you had an identity, you have an identity, but you get away from it and adopt an alternative identity for a while, isn't it? That's really the essence of abhimana, of identification. Whereas in the case of your life and the message of Vedanta, not just the message, but the vision of Vedanta. This is the vision of Vedanta, the vision of the self. You are unaware of any identity that you can fall back on. See the difference? We know that, but I'm just bringing it out in this point. The difference is that going to a movie, you had an identity, but you forgot about it. Not forgot, but you're no longer keeping that in front of you as you're watching the movie. Because, I mean, you can if you want to, and oftentimes, if you've had some very severe problem, then even while you're watching the movie, you cannot enjoy it because the problem continues to interfere with your fun, with the entertainment. You can, but generally speaking, you get away from it. In this life, in this message, the Shastric vision, you never even knew what your identity is. Never. It's not as though you used to know it and now you have forgotten. Self-ignorance is something which is there even though it never began. That's the nature of ignorance. It doesn't begin. Because that's very interesting. If ignorance were to begin, then what was there prior to ignorance? Knowledge. So in the case of a movie going, there is no ignorance, there is forgetfulness. Not even forgetfulness, there is a disassociation, you might say. You have the ability to forget about your own identity and just be absorbed in a new identity. But in the case of my life, Shastra says you don't even know your identity. However, with that difference, the situation is the same. With that difference means that in one case you knew your identity and you are disassociating yourself from it, and in the other case you never knew your identity. And so in that sense, it's a little bit more of a challenge. Because in going to a movie, let's construct something interesting. You're watching a movie and you're getting completely absorbed. Suddenly there is an earthquake. God forbid. While you're watching the movie, there can be an earthquake. As soon as the earthquake takes place, what happens? Your identification goes. You fall back on the identity of your life. Oh my gosh, I'm sitting in this hall and there is what's going to happen? Should we run? Should we go outside? This is earthquake country, the Bay Area. So you fall back on the identity very easily. In my life, if I don't know what my identity is, I am only following an abhimana. And I keep doing that. Because I want to, the storyline of my life is not all pleasant. It's got all kinds of problems. But I don't know what else to do. So I keep following that, and then I try different things. It's like going to a different movie. And that movie also is a little bit better, but it still has problems. It has tragedy and comedy and problems and fights and all those kinds of things. Exactly what happens in our life. We go from one life to the other, hoping that this would be better. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Generally speaking, well, I don't know about all of that, so let's not get into it, but generally speaking, your life should get better, but it doesn't always. Because supposing in a road rage is a very interesting thing. You're going there quietly, driving, everything is okay, you're listening to music and so on. Suddenly there is an accident. And whose fault it is, then it becomes paramount. And you start to quarrel. And the quarrel can turn into a fight. And the fight can turn into violence. Your whole life becomes upside down. And supposing, God forbid, this is the problem in this country, everybody has a potential gun. You kill somebody in rage. Before that, everything was okay. Now you kill somebody. How is your next life going to be? Worse than this one. So there's ups and downs, it just continues on. All because of the fact of what? Abhimana. Really the essence of the problem, if you want to say, Shastra has a vision for me. You're okay. You're away from all of that. Sat Swarupoham, etc. How do I see it? What do I need to? This is exactly what right. Our first reaction to this is what I said earlier, that the Advaita Vedanta has a very unique vision. It is not what you need to do, but what you are. It's interesting. This is a very important thing. I mean, we kind of know it, but we don't pay any attention to this. Because, so for example, I think I was reading something from Swami Kanananda ji. He was recounting. This is very. I really enjoy his communicating his vision through his experiences. Very detailed one. This is so wonderful. There's so much detail in his experiences. Like, for example, this one. So one experience was that, he learned from, this is not an easy thing for us to really absorb because we get distracted. There's so much going on in our life. And as he did too. And one of the distractions is that it looks academic. I have to do this, then I have to read Bhagavad Gita, then I have to read Upanishads and Prakarana Grantha and Brahma Sutra and so on and so forth. And it all doesn't come together for me in a way that is beneficial, which is effective. Even though it is telling me the right thing, but it's really not quite there yet. So this is what Swami Kanananda was talking about. That I really went from, he says, all my life has been a struggle to go to the right people and to listen to them. And slowly, slowly the messages started to percolate. And he himself says that finally it started to make sense to me. And now I can communicate it in a different way. But his experiences were all very useful in really self-absorption, the Atma Vichara. And I tell you, this is happening to me also. The more I follow his experiences and so on. And one of the experiences, he said, was that he followed 3 or 4 Mahatmas very much, the ones that really clarified the whole thing to him. This Uriya Babaji, so there's some Babaji, that's all he says. He doesn't have any name, and I haven't really looked into all of that. But Uriya Babaji was the one that he says clarified the whole thing to me. And he really was devoted to him all of his life. And then he went to other Mahatmas to confirm, that's the word I'm looking for, to confirm, reconfirm, yes, this is what you need to do. We went to Uriya Babaji, and there was some very, sadhu, not just an ordinary person, but one who has already given up the usual pursuit of life and really was devoted, but still had not gotten the Brahma Vidya very clearly. So he went to Uriya Babaji and said, "Tell me about the self. How do I don't quite understand it. I'm reading about it, I'm studying about it, and so on, but tell me more about it." In this particular example, it's not as though it is the everything. Swami Uriya Babaji said, "Listen, it is all about understanding what you are, not what you do." And he gave an example. He said, suppose you need to build a house. Or even if you were to take a simplify it, you want to make a clay cup, clay vessel. Forget about the complexity of making a house. Just talk about just one ghata. What's the Hindi and the Sanskrit word for cup is ghata, or a jar or something like this. So there are some instructions. You have to collect the earth. Then you have to put water into it, have the right consistency, and then you mold it, etc., etc. There's something that needs to be done, right? Swami Uriya Babaji was saying. He says, now tell me, you already had the earth from where you're collecting the dirt. You already had it. There is nothing to be done to make the earth. It is given to you. What you do with it is up to you. But what it already is, there's nothing to be done. You just have to see it and make use of it. That's it. So this is an interesting thing to see, and then we'll go through the narrative on this, is that our feeling is that I've got to do something. And why is my feeling? Because I'm used to doing that. That's how I lead my life. What's to be done next? No, no, I'm not happy. I gotta do this. No, no, this is not working. I gotta do something else. No, now it's not this. What else should I do? Doing, 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 doing. This is what my life is. It is exactly like what do I need to do to make a clay cup? What's the next thing that I need to do? But as far as the earth is concerned, there is nothing to be done because that is the basic building block. In the same way, here is what is happening to us. I am getting involved in the complexity of abhimana, the nuances, the challenges. I need to do this, then I've got to do that, this, then I evaluate it. This is what my life is. It's exactly like a complicated version of building a cup. And so this is exactly it is. I'm busy, totally busy, involved. This is what happens. It's you ask somebody, how's your life? Busy. I'm very busy. And everybody really is. And even if you're not busy, you do not admit that you are not busy. That's another thing. Have you ever seen what I have nothing to do? Either if you say I have nothing to do, either you're bored or you're happy, you don't need to do anything. But most people will not reveal that either way. They'll say, no, 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 I'm very busy. I've got so much going on in my life. So much going on. Busy, busy, busy. How? Because I'm identified with a storyline, with situations, my children, my work, my neighborhood, politics, all of that I am very busy with. Okay, you're all busy. It's like, what about the thing that you already have? Not only what you have, but what you already are. Oh, well, that's, I don't know. I'm not clear about what I am. I'm just busy doing things. This is the situation with the abhimana. This is what the seventh mantra is saying. Please see what is happening. You are involved with antaf pragyam, bahish pragyam, and all these other kind of pragyam. So here pragyam, the word pragya has different connotations, but here it means an expression. An expression. How does it manifest itself? It manifests itself as antapragyam, bahishpragyam, which we've seen and will continue to do that. So now let's go back to the principle of abhimana. So here, I'm really following. Don't say that I'm just. Don't even think. Never think that I'm doing it on my own. No, I'm incapable. I only follow the teachings of Mahatmas. If I find a Mahatma that appeals to my thinking, I said, yes, this is what I need to do. And I continue to do that. So here Swami Kanananda says, what is Abhimana? Let's look at it. So Abhimana is a prefix attached to Mana. Mana means to consider, to have, to be aware of something. It's called Mana. In fact, Mana, of course, has different connotations. They say Mani. What is the Amanitvam? Yeah, this is what I was thinking of. In the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asks, what do you mean by knowledge? When he talks about jnanam, what is knowledge? So these 20 qualities that Sri Krishna gives to Arjuna, this is a fascinating thing really. These 20 qualities is exactly the 7th mantra of Amanitvam, Adambitvam, Ahimsa, Kshantir Arjavam. So he goes into 20 different ones. And there also it is negation. Amanitvam. So in Amanitvam, so that's a slightly more, this is a stronger version of Mana. What do you mean by that? What do I mean by that? Mana means one that has an ego. Mani means an egoistic person. So egoistic person means that, again, it's really a stronger form of Abhimana, that you have an identity which is not supported by facts. And in fact, the next word is Adambitvam. So Swami Dayananji, if you follow his teachings, beautiful teaching, Swami Dayananji on Amanitvam, Adambitvam, that is the value of values, the very famous book called Value of Values. Really worth reading if you haven't really seen it. So there, Amanitvam means exaggeration. So ego means an exaggeration. I know what to do. I've had a lot of experience. And I think even though you haven't had that lot of experience, you've had some experience. So it's not as though it is false. You had some experience, but you exaggerated. This is called Manitvam. The next one is Adambitvam. Adambitvam means not only exaggeration, but complete falsehood. It's called Adambitvam. Anyway, so all those qualities are given, and in the form of knowledge means not this, not this, not this. Na antah pragyam, na bahish pragyam, etc. No identification. Okay? So this is what is called mana. So going back to Swami Akhandanandaji's explanation, he says, let's analyze how Abhimana occurs. Abhimana occurs when you have a mana. Mana means there is something to be identified with. So what that means is that something that has a form, a presence, visibility, form, visibility, etc. Something that you can identify with, right? It's called mana. And Swami Akhandananda says, will you ever identify with akasha, with space? No. No, you won't do that. Why? Why not? Because it has no form. There is no form. You cannot identify it. You take that for granted. But the very next expression of the Pancha Mahabhutas is Vayu. Akasha, then the next one is Vayu. Yes, I can identify it with Vayu. How? My gosh, it is so windy today. When is the wind going to go down? Either it's, if it is the hot weather, it's augmented by wind. It gets, in India, in the hot weather, if the heat itself is okay, but when Vayu gets into the picture, it gets worse. Same thing in cold weather. So you have a wind chill factor. So Vayu you can identify with, but not Akasha. This is a very important thing to see. Even though Akasha is the essence of all the Pancha Mahabhutas. Akashat Vayu. Vayu came from Akasha. Vayu Agni. Then slowly it gets more solidified. It's all the same, but the essence of that is in the Akasha. But because Akasha does not have any form, you cannot identify with it. Now comes the interesting part. You do not identify with Atma. The Jiva does not identify with the Atma. Why not? Because it has no form. Even Akasha has more form than Atma. How? Because Akasha, the space, is an expression. It comes and goes. When you wake up, there is an Akasha. When you're dreaming, there is another Akasha. When you're asleep, the Akasha disappears and it reappears. So Akasha has an expression, some presence. Even though the presence is so subtle that you do not identify with it. But Atma is even subtler than the Akasha. You see, even after discussion and analysis and so on, you can say, yeah, I can see Akasha reappearing and disappearing. The Atma doesn't even do that. This is how subtle it is. It is the very presence, the conscious, the Gyapti Swarupa, the very knowledge I am, I know, which is there. See, even before the expression of the Akasha in the waking state, the knowledge has to be there. Awareness has to be already there, isn't it? It's not as though knowledge came later after Akasha. No. Akasha reappears and disappears, but the Atma is already there, always there. I know. I can see the space. No, I don't see the space. And what happens to the space, you know? It's very dark. I don't see it. Oh, it has blue color. All those kinds of things associated with Akasha, you know. You're always knower. So anyway, what is said is that if you think you don't identify with Akasha, which is true, you do not have any identification with the Akasha, there is all the more reason that you do not have an identification with Atma. Which is your identity. So we can now see that Abhimana, identification, which is the source of my life's problems, is not with the Atma but with Anatma. And Anatma expresses itself in various forms. So I have a Jagrat Avastha Abhimana, waking state Abhimana. There is a storyline and a very steady storyline which has been going on for a while, even though it is false. But it is steadily false and reappears every time I get up in the morning. And this Abhimana is in the Jagrat Avastha is a conscious thought. See, that's the other thing. It's interesting if we can just pause for a minute and go back to, we talked about the essence of problems in life as being Abhimana, right? We talked about that as the essence. That's the vision of Vedanta. And we are still on that track, and we will be. But let's pause and look at another aspect, which is important for us to see, and it is tied up with Abhimana, which is this. This is really mind-blowing, honestly. Once you understand this is incredible. What Advaita Vedanta, the Shastra, says is all of your problems in your life are mental. All problems? What do you mean by all problems? Do you really mean all problems? The entire Jagat, the entire samsara? That's not how. I don't see that. Please see it. The entire problem in life is mental. There is nothing really solid. It is all thoughts, 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 thoughts. The whole thing. You know, we in the beginning we make a distinction. You know, there is sthula sharira, 3 types of sharira. We say there is sthula sharira, which is gross body. Every jiva has all of the. This is what we talk about. Every jiva has 3 different shariras: sthula sharira, sukshma sharira, and karana sharira. Right? So this means that there are 3 different things. There is a solid body, there is a hardware, there's software, and there is karana sharira, which is the reason for those 2. So this is what been taught all along. This is just the beginning. To say that there are 3, there is a gross body, there is a subtle body, and so on and so forth. This is all in the beginning. But if you want, this is kind of like physics, high school physics. But if you talk about advanced physics, about quantum physics, it is means. This is exactly what the modern science also says, that E is equal to mc square means that energy and matter are exactly the same. There's no such thing as really matter. It is just vibrations. So that's a separate thing, and we can discuss that some other time. But going back to the fact that this is something to really think about, and anytime there's a vision given, I need to, I wouldn't say accept it, but I need to have Shraddha in it. So the advanced vision of Vedanta, not the beginning one where you have Sthula Sharira, everything is mental. The human being is also mental. What? The idea, my sense of beingness is a thought. The essence of everything is thoughts. Thoughts. It's all mental. And this is why my understanding has problems, because it is based on a false assumption that I have limitations. Mental. My limitations are not real. It is, I have convinced myself, and of course there's a lot of false convincing supporting experiences that solidify it. This is what the Jagrat Avastha is. Now, in the Swapna Avastha, in the dream state, I also have a sense of limitation, mental, but there you can see that the mental conclusion that I'm a limited person in the dream is a dream. It's false. So the point is very interesting that the dream experience is a great proof of the fact that the whole thing is nothing but mental. Because otherwise I'll never be convinced. I can be sitting here and say, everything is mental. And you'll say, oh, what is he smoking? I don't understand. Should I even be attending this class? He keeps on saying it's mental, 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 mental. Be real. You'll probably just walk away from it. And you may anyway. But really what you should think about, don't dismiss it so easily. I've said this before, and this is what I learned from Swami Akhandananda. He said, my dear, Shivalinga. We think about Shivalinga as just a stone. Shivalinga means, linga means, lingyate anena iti linga. It's a hint, a very strong hint, clear hint. Dream is the presence of Ishvara's linga. And the Shastra is the word of Ishvara. Shastra says, please, please, please. The whole thing is just nothing but a play of thoughts. Even in the dream you had a conclusion that I'm just a limited person. That's an identification. It's an identification with something which is not your identity, not your own identity. You just sort of get absorbed into a narrative which looks very real, and your own conclusion also becomes, just like in a movie, you don't feel that I am being mistreated, but identified with a character, you feel I'm being mistreated. And if it becomes bad, then tears can fall under your eyes. So dream can make your, they're not dream. It is interesting. Just look at this. The dream experiences can cross over into your real identity. Isn't it? It is really fascinating. When you start crying in a movie, isn't there a crossover of a false identity into real identity? It is. So anyway, the point is that identification, abhimana, can do a number on you. And it does. It is doing it every day. Please see this fact. Because everything looks very, this is me, this is real. I have to do this, I've got problems, I got to do this, and so on and so forth. Shastra says, my dear, can you please listen to me for a second? Abhimana. You are an Abhimani for the waking state. You are the Abhimani of the waking state. The waking state is doing a number on you. And your conclusion, which is all mental, is that I'm just a small person. This is me. That's not who you are. You have adopted that identification. Really? How is that possible? Look at the dream. There also you have adopted an identification and you go through that. Look at a movie. You adopt an identification and you enjoy or suffer, and all that is entertainment. Swami Dayanand used to say that. He says, it's interesting that you're crying in a movie and yet you're eating popcorn. Very interesting, really. So, for a jnani, for a Mahatma, which we all potentially must become, every one of us is a potential jnani. We should do it. We have to. What happens is the whole experience of life becomes an entertainment, even if it is tragic. I tell you, I'm not joking. I'm enjoying Trump's new government. I'm really enjoying it. It's an entertainment. How he's firing people left and right. He just fired the army chief and the navy chief, appointing ridiculous people into all kinds of. Kash Patel has become the FBI director. What the heck is going on? Entertainment. Even if I'm upset, that's also entertainment to me, honestly. Every day I get up and say, what else has he done now? He has fired this person, he's fired that person. This is exactly what happens. That for a jnani, the whole life becomes a movie. And even if you have to cry, deep down below you'll say, oh my God, what an interesting movie that I have to cry. You rise above that altogether. So, two things I would say is to keep in mind as we analyze the vision of Nantah Pragyam, Nabahish Pragyam, etc. Two things to keep in mind. So one is that it's a play of abhimana, of identification. And it's augmented by the difficulty that you don't know your true identity. You cannot identify with Atma because it has no form that you normally associate with in order to lead your life. How you lead your life is through identification of one thing or the other. If there is no form like akasha, you don't identify with it. And you don't need to identify with the akasha, you're just identifying with Vayu, Agni, Apaha, Prithvi, etc. But in the case of Atma, this becomes a huge problem because you are misidentifying with other things, not realizing that you don't need to identify. You don't need to identify. And so this is number one. And the second one is, please understand that the whole thing is nothing but a play of thoughts. So those two combine, go together. And then, of course, it's a matter to see so the whole analysis of, this is why the Mandukya Upanishad is so crucial, is to see the nature of identification. Because and this is how the creation is made by Ishvara. This is the Shivalinga. Ishvara says, please, if your waking state was real, it will never go. Don't you see that? But it goes. And it goes every day. That proves it's an identification. The movie ends, it's gone. Until you go out to see the next movie. So similarly here also what's happening is that you are seeing a movie during the day, it disappears. You have a completely different identification. That also disappears. Then you have no identification. That also disappears. You come back to the original movie. And you come back to the original movie because there is a pull. There is a strong pull of your previous vasanas. And you don't give that up easily. And so you come back to it, even though it is false. Kind of like, I don't know, I'm just constructing an example. It's kind of like you go back to the same movie. Or the same set of play or something like that. But the very fact that it doesn't stay is a very strong hint. A strong hint by Ishvara. This is by Shiva, by Shivalinga. This is the Shivalinga. That this is an identification, it is mental, that's it. Nothing real about it. So this we will continue to examine as we go forward. I don't think I finished everything, but we'll continue on with the words of the seventh mantra. Antah pragyam, etc. But that's what it is saying. I mean, we're just looking at it from different words, but that is the essence of the seventh mantra. Okay, so with that, I'll close today's class. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Good to see you all. Still a lot of absences. I don't know where everybody is, but I'm happy you are here. And we will hopefully see you next week. Hari Om.